Hey everyone! Before we open today's file, please make sure to follow us on Instagram at d.s.radio, where you can find all the images that go along with today's case. You can drop us an email at contact.dsradio@gmail.com. You can find all of our socials in the Linktree bio on our Instagram profile, including links to merch. If you're feeling especially generous, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio, where you can get access to our exclusive Instagram page and make suggestions for upcoming episode topics that you would like us to cover. Speaking of Patreon, thanks to our Patreons, Riff Cult, Cropley Crab, Cash Broadus, Raspberry Jr., Jason R. Nelson, Creepy Paper, Jamie Sook, Michael Laughlin, Lindsay Keller, Mike Wright, Greer Weaver, Kelsey Carruthers, Linz Gibbon, Drake Holvig, Only Child, Michael M, Wesley Akers, Riaz K, Emily Medeiros, Pip, Heather Wynn, Graves, Devon Sweatshirt, The Ordained Sinister Minister, and Philip Hoffman. Hi everyone, and welcome to Dystopian Simulation Radio. I'm your host, Linz.
And I am your other host, Chris. How you doing, Linz?
Good. I had made the mistake of mixing 3 toxic waste candies and putting them all in my mouth at once. And I don't know what that flavour is, but it was probably one of the most horrendous things ever. Kind of like burnt rubber. How are you?
Wow, that was a lot of information. I'm fine. I haven't put any kind of toxic waste into my mouth that I know of. I'm just fine.
Well, you know, when you sleep with your mouth open and the aliens come through and you're all unconscious, you don't know what's going to happen, Chris.
The aliens are going to come where? What?
Well, that's what they do. You know, that wasn't an innuendo, but the aliens are known to go in your endo. So. Hey, Chris, before we start, what do we have to tell the listeners? Oh, yes. If you want to follow along with any visuals, and there will be visuals for this episode today, you can do so on Instagram at d.s.radio. And if you want to support us on Patreon, you can do so
over on our Patreon page at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio. And let me tell you, if you're a member of our Patreon, we've got something very special coming your way quite soon.
Oh, I know what this is, but I'm going to shut up.
As soon as we're ready to announce it, we'll let you know. But yeah, we've got some good stuff in the works. I'll put it that way.
Chris, I have an interesting question for you.
Shoot.
How do you feel about your body? Bit personal, I know, but if you want to answer in a general way, feel free.
I would probably change it if I had a chance. It is a body. It functions. But yeah, I'd probably change quite a bit about it if I could.
Well, I think you look great, but you have a body.
Well, thank you.
It works, it's healthy, it does the job, right?
Yeah, I mean, no complaints on that front. It does the job.
It does the job. Well, sometimes we take our average functioning human bodies for granted. We get pressured by the media to want to look a certain way, and we sometimes feel ashamed or lacking if we don't. But do we ever just appreciate that we have average working bodies? After all, some people don't.
I suppose you're right. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of things I would change about my body if I could wave a magic wand. But at the same time, touch wood, I don't have any ongoing health conditions. Everything seems to work more or less as it should. So, yeah, compared to a lot of people, it is a working, functioning body.
Maybe this case isn't a matter of not liking your body, maybe just that your body may not function in a way it does for the average person. Enter neurosurgeon Sergio Canavero. Almost a decade ago, Sergio Canavero of the Turin Advanced Neuromodulation Group began making media appearances, claiming that he was going to perform the world's first head transplant. Or, well,
Ooh.
Body transplant, I guess. Chris,
Fuck's sake.
Stop getting bank alerts.
We've got a new follower.
Yes!
Thanks,
Okay.
Jay Haynes.
Thanks, Jay Haynes. Oh, that was very cute. So, transplanting a living human head onto a donor body, the technical term for this surgery is cephalosomatic anastomosis.
Come again?
So obviously, Chris, this shocked the world as the ability to transplant the head of, let's say, a terminally ill person with a disease of the body onto a donor body could prolong an individual's life and would be nothing short of a medical miracle.
Yeah, I never really thought about this, but yeah, I suppose that's one way rather than curing the condition. If you've got, some form of cancer and it's not something, it's not like, it's not like gangrene, you can lop off a limb and try and preserve it. It's something that is kind of essential to the body and you're trying to heal the cause of it, the cancer. Then,
And
yeah,
of course
suppose,
it spreads, right? Yeah.
It does, yeah. So if you can, lop off the head and attach it to someone else, then yeah, I suppose that would work.
In theory,
kind of like,
yeah.
In science fiction, back of the napkin, yes, it would work.
It's a nice idea, exactly like you said, if you have a terminal illness that's likely to spread, can't be cured, and you think, my head, my brain, all that's fine. If only I could just have a new body. And then there you go. You wake up with the Rock's body, Chris, or the Big Show.
Oh, hey, now we're talking. Maybe not a Big Show. Oh, Chris, you look different. Ha ha ha. Yes, I'm 7'2"
Well, I'm the Big Show.
With that, though, it might start off in that way. So, to help people with serious conditions, but it would end up going through into plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery, what I'm trying to say, people doing it for the looks of it. But can you imagine how weird it would be? You would end up with people with really, really old faces, but a 21-year-old's body.
Yeah, this is something I thought about, and I think maybe we'll discuss that more towards the end, but this is one of the first things for some reason that came to my mind, as well as some rich person seeing a really hot person with a great body going, prefer that one, and then suddenly that person goes missing.
Yeah, or it opens up a sort of industry of really indecent proposals. Like, I want your body, baby. Literally.
She agreed. It was a verbal contract. She said, me too. So, Chris, at the time, yes, Canavero made the rounds talking about his previous successful attempts of body transplants on various creatures, or head transplants. Radical operations that he said were successful. It all became too real when Canavero announced that he had found a willing head donor. Yes, a living man who volunteered to have his head severed from his body and stitched and fused onto a donor body. So, Chris, what kind of person do you think would volunteer for something like this, if you had to guess?
Somebody with nothing to lose, I would guess.
You'd think so?
Either somebody that's very, very confident in this method and is willing to sort of literally bet their life on it, or somebody who is just like, hey, I'm really rolling the dice here, and if it works, great. I'll end up with probably loads of money and, smoking hot new body. But if not, I had a good ride.
Smoking hot new body. Someone with nothing to lose who wants to be really hot and tall. But, you're not that far off, Chris. So, Valery Spiridonov suffers from a muscle wasting condition called Verdnig-Hoffman disease. Verdnig-Hoffman disease is a type of spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA. It's a rare form of motor neuron disease that causes the body to lose movement over time due to the deconstruction of muscles and nerves in both the brain and the spinal cord. So Val was in his early 30s at the time, and he did not see the quality of his life improving. He said of his condition,
Ultimately, there is no alternative because my muscles are gradually atrophying and my heart may eventually stop working. Most people with my condition do not make it to my age, so I am an exception. In spite of this, I am very active, as you can see with the tech projects I am working on.
Thank you, Chris. That was beautiful. And not too far off. But he's a lovely man and he's fine, so don't worry, everybody. So in an interview in the UK with Good Morning Television, yes, Chris, he was on Good Morning Television.
On GMTV.
Yeah, he was. They focused on...
Tell me which heavyweight interviewed him. Was it Lorraine Kelly or Piers Morgan?
Unfortunately for all of us, it was Piers Morgan.
Oh, no.
I know. So he did this interview, but they seemed to be more focused on Val personally. They were curious about his feelings and the motivations behind the decision to undergo such a radical surgery that's never been done before. Although he would later go on to express disappointment in the interview's focus on him as a person rather than the surgery itself, Val expressed that he needed daily help and support to get around, and he felt that his quality of life would not improve without this radical surgery, adding that he believed the surgery would benefit humanity in the future. So, Chris, let's take a look at that clip.
Let's.
As you can see, I'm disabled in a pretty heavy condition. But also, I'm very fond of science. I digged deeply into this topic of this kind of transplantations for about 20 years. I read about Robert White's experiments with monkeys and Professor Vladimir Demichov experiments with dogs. So I thought that if this technology could be improved and could be done safe enough to make the transplant on human and to make the transplant with the point where the brain will be able to control the new body, it will make sense. And of course, we should evolve this procedure and make it happen.
Valerie, obviously, it's a very dangerous operation. Absolutely. You know that. You're a smart guy. You know the risks involved. Have you just taken a view, you have a terminal illness anyway, your life expectancy is not great, you have nothing to lose. Is that your thinking? And I suppose my second question is, do you know what your quality of life could be if this is all a huge success?
Okay, let me explain. I'm not doing only this project, this full body transplantation project. I'm also in charge of several other projects, but this was the most public one. I also try to improve lives of other people by creating autopilot wheelchair systems, other accessible devices, but it became so that Dr. Canavero's project is most known.
But for you personally, Valerie?
Yes.
I'm trying to get inside, well, quite literally your head about this, right? I want to know what is making you do this? What is your motivation personally?
My motivation personally is about improving my own life conditions and to go to the stage where I will be able to take care of myself, where I will be independent from other people.
And you believe this operation, if it's successful?
Yes, absolutely.
If it's completely successful,
yes,
and there are massive risks, it's never been done, but if it works, you believe the quality of your life will not only be extended, but could actually be quite reasonable.
We're trying to do our best to make this experiment safe and to make it believable. And we try to do all the research which is needed to be safe, because today my life is pretty tough. I need to invite people to help me every day, even twice a day, because I need someone to take me off my bed and put me to my wheelchair, to assist me through the day. So it makes my life pretty dependable from other people. And if there will be a way to change this, I believe that it should be tried, used.
Okay, well, he seems like a very reasonable person. He seems to have his shit together and seems to know what he's going into. It's not kind of the opposite of what I laid out at the beginning, I think, where I was just sort of thinking it could be somebody who was just very vain. It's quite the opposite. He's quite realistic about his situation and is rolling the dice to see if he can improve it.
Yeah, so Val went on to do a Reddit AMA, Ask Me Anything. I suspect this was to not only answer questions at his own pace, but to advertise his invention, the Clever Chair, which is a wheelchair that users can control with an app using their hands or voice. Although a good and helpful invention, the GoFundMe campaign ended with just 182 Great British pounds of the 42,000 goal met. Yeah, sometimes those things just don't take off. So Chris, I thought we could read a few of the top AMA answers, as it gives more of an insight that isn't controlled by Piers Morgan interrupting somebody every 5 seconds.
Yeah. I just want to get into your head. Literally.
Yeah, I mean, oh my God, come on. And like, he always asks a question, and then when the person's answering it, he's like, oh, blah, 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 in the middle. It's like, oh my God, like, just let them speak. We've heard you speak more than them.
I know. I apologise to everybody out there. He's Britain's worst modern export.
We will read 5 of the top questions from the AMA, not the ones that were asking about, oh my God, because it's a Reddit, can you guess what people started asking him about?
I'm going to guess it's going to be, are you going to get a female body or are you going to get a body with a massive schlong?
Yeah,
Or
and also, are you going to jack off right away? It's like, oh my God. So yeah,
First place you're going to jack off.
Yeah, it's just... But we do get some insightful questions that aren't about jacking off. I filtered them out. And they're kind of like the top 5. So the first question was from user Stephen VA. And he said, are you not scared? If it does work, do you know how long it will take to heal?
Of course, but life is scary in general. Most people with the same disability that I have do not live to be my age. The same can be said for someone like Stephen Hawking. I'm alive and I want to make the world a better place. That is why I want to be the first head transplant patient and why I develop things like the Clever Chair.
So the Clever Chair, as I told you, was the GoFundMe project that he had. And unfortunately, because he was promoting it in most of his answers, a lot of the Reddit comments were like, but will you be sitting in the Clever Chair with your new body? And it's like, they just started to roast him. Poor dude. So the second question, the actual comment was removed and the username was removed, but I thought that Val's answer was insightful.
Technically, I will be only a head if I go ahead with the transplant. In all seriousness, many people do not understand that my goal is not to be a guinea pig, but instead as a person who supports innovative technology. That is why I'm developing the Clever Chair, and it's why I'm supporting research in head transplantation. I want to be the first patient, but only once it is proven as a relatively safe surgery.
So I think that's something that it didn't really come across in those sensationalized TV interviews. I think people thought that he was just going to go under the knife right away without any successful transplants before. And I think that's kind of what made it seem very scary.
Yeah, it seems like he's kind of throwing caution to the wind and just being like, yeah, if it works, it works. If I die, I die.
Yeah, which actually, he's a very intelligent guy. He is getting around. Like he might need help. He said he needed help a couple of times a day, and I think that's not actually very much for him, to be honest. But obviously we don't know how it feels. But I don't know. I just feel like it is still a risk, even though he has this disease and everything. But I guess, he said, it progresses. So maybe he's thinking it's a bit of a race against time.
If he wasn't expecting to be living to this age anyway, he might have been thinking, well, this is what I planned on, and I'm going to gamble now.
Yeah, true. So the third one comes from user Katie versus Bubbles. And she said, what will be the first thing you do after surgery and presumably the years of physiotherapy? I find your candor and courage very inspiring.
I would like to buy a Ducati motorcycle and go on vacation.
Nice. So the fourth question was from a user who's now deleted, but they asked, from the comments, I get the feeling that you are trusting your doctor with the specifics of the operation, or am I wrong? Since this is a life or death issue, I don't know how I could not be obsessed with every detail before making the decision of the go-ahead with this operation. I understand your illness shortens your life, but you'd be throwing away some of those years if the surgery doesn't work. What are your thoughts about this?
I will never be able to dedicate 30 years of my life towards research of head transplantation like Canavero has. So everyone must do what they do best. In my case, it's advocating for technological innovation and developing projects like Cleverchair. Saying that, Canavero has published numerous scientific papers about the subject which any physician can critique. In May, for example, there were studies published in the medical journal Surgery, which you can read for very in-depth information about the procedure. This was done by Chinese doctors and Canavero. It is a very interesting read.
He's really chill. He sounds so chill about it, doesn't he? It's an interesting read. It's like, yeah, your life kind of depends on that being an interesting and factually accurate, feasible read. The last question was from user PCP Tornado, which is a great name. And they said, quite a few with SMA live rather long and productive lives. Do you see the head transplant as the only alternative to living? You don't seem to be using any ventilator support yet. Also, as you pointed out, reattaching the spinal cord is the biggest hurdle. I mean, thousands have spinal cord injuries every year, yet I'm not aware of any current procedure that can reattach/repair the connection in humans. You mentioned an experiment done in mice. Has this been attempted since in primates at least? If there was a safe and effective treatment to reattach the spinal cord, why isn't it offered to those who suffer injury? Which is a very good question.
Great questions. Experiments have been done in primates and there have been proven reattachment of the spinal cord in mice. You are right. Something like this has the potential to affect millions of people with spinal cord injuries. The difference is that a surgical clean cut is not the same as a traumatic injury, so the healing process is very different. If you'd like to know more about the procedure and plan, then I would suggest Googling the Heaven/Gemini project for further details.
And if you do Google that, you will find the papers that he was talking about, like outlining the whole procedure step by step. So if you want an in-depth read of the actual papers for this, they're still up there and you can read them. Reddit user PCP Tornado has a valid point asking if the surgery had at the very least been tried on primates. Well, as Val explained, it was indeed tested on mice, but they didn't survive very long afterwards. So the most difficult part of this radical surgery would be connecting the severed spinal cord of the transplanted head to the spinal cord of the donor body, and also to stop the body rejecting the head, which is terrifying.
That can happen with a quote-unquote simple transplant. Livers can get rejected, things along those lines. And that's, scary enough. But the idea
of your head being that organ. Yeah. Oh my God.
The entire body.
I think it would be the body rejecting the head, actually.
Really?
I think so. I think that's what I read. The body may reject the head.
Oh. Because I was thinking it might be the other way around, because it would be a bit like, if you imagine, like, if you had, like, a phone and you used it every day, and then one day, when you picked up the phone, all the people you were trying to speak to had different accents. That would be a bit what it'd be like if you, as a brain, I suppose, you're trying to communicate with a liver, but you're not the liver, I know. It's a very simplistic way of putting it, but
yeah, because there's so many things that need to be reattached properly and seamlessly and fused together. But I know what you mean. It's like two different components that weren't together before, like they're being switched out and they suddenly can't communicate between one or the other. Yeah, it's really hard to wrap your head around, I guess. So, Chris, on this technical note, what does a head transplant surgery actually look like? Like, what happens? How? How much does it cost?
Well, it depends where you get it done, I suppose. But I imagine this is, as it's an experimental treatment, I imagine it would be free.
It would be funded, but yeah, obviously Val wouldn't have been paying for it.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been paying for it. Obviously, they've got to acquire a recently dead body from somewhere, which is an interesting thing in itself because there's organ donation, but is there body donation?
I guess there's
Like,
people who donate
entire
their
body?
bodies to science. If you remember, we did the Body Brokers episode, and people were donating their bodies to science, and they were literally getting hacked up, sold off to here, there, and everywhere, blown up by the military. Yeah, so I guess any of those people who are donating their bodies to science, would they count? Possibly, in the US at least.
I mean, they would, but at the same time, it's a bit like, when they were, like you say, when bodies were getting blown up and the families found out, they were like, hang on a second, this is not what we signed up for. We wanted those organs to go towards people who needed help. Imagine if you saw somebody walking down the street and you were like, I know that body.
Yeah, with the same tattoos and everything and scars.
Yeah.
That would be wild. Yeah, so the operation was going to take place in China. It would require a team of 150 specialists, taking around 36 hours to perform at a cost of over $1 million. It was set to take place in 2017, and the research, which is published online for anyone to read, is called Heaven/Gemini. Look that up. It is a read. So this was Canavero's plan in layman's terms. So the head would belong to a young person suffering from a terminal disease or a disease with progressive muscular issues. The donor or the body would belong to a healthy patient with similar proportions. The patient donating the body would basically be brain dead. First, the bodies would be cooled to stop the cells from dying. The head would be subjected to hypothermia, with hypothermia in the donor body located mainly in the spine to avoid damage to the organs, etc. The how is a bit technical to get into here, but like I said, look up the Gemini Heaven papers. So the patient's neck would then be cut through to expose the spinal cord, the nerves, and the vertebral arteries, and the jugulars and veins and muscles, and everything else in there that you're going to have to reconnect, all of which would be marked for the following steps. The patient's head would then be connected to the donor body.
Right. And
that's a big leap. That's a big leap. All of these things have to be seamlessly connected. And in his TED Talk, Canavero kind of demonstrates this by picking up a handful of, he's Italian, remember, spaghetti.
Spaghetti.
Oh dear. His TED Talk is really something. Look that up too if you can. So the patient's head would then be severed from the body, drained of all blood, and flushed with sodium lactate solution. This solution is usually used to replace electrolyte and water in those with low blood pressure or low blood volume, and I suppose your blood volume would be pretty low if you'd been beheaded and drained of all blood. This is just too sci-fi horror to actually think about as a real thing.
It does sound something out of Buck Rogers or something like that. I don't know, something like an old sci-fi thing where it's like, right, we need to transplant the body from one to the other, and it's something out of like the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, and everyone refers to Canavero as Dr. Frankenstein, which is quite predictable.
It reminds me a little bit of the Simpsons Treehouse Horror.
But aren't they all based on like Poe and Lovecraft and stuff?
I think so. I think this one might have been based on a Twilight Zone episode. So that's what spurred my mind, me mentioning Twilight there, but I'm not sure. It's the one where Snake has his hair transplanted onto Homer.
Yeah. He starts doing
Homer
crimes or something.
Acting and talking like Snake, and like his like tattoo starts like bursting through his body and things.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to fear, I guess, you know. So after this, the patient's spinal cord would then be cut, and Canavero was planning to do this using an ultra-sharp neurosurgical blade, some sources say made of diamond, for that extra crispy cut.
For that extra Bond villain flair.
Yeah, I mean, why not? So the head would then be moved onto the body and the spinal cord fused together. Polyethylene glycol would then be infused into the donor's blood circulation.
I used to date her.
You're so stupid. Polyethylene glycol, or Chris's ex-girlfriend, would then be infused into the donor's blood circulation to help fuse everything together. Additional polyethylene glycol would be administered after several hours. The next step would be linking the muscles, blood vessels, and following a successful operation, the body would be induced into a coma where it would remain in that state for upwards of a month to heal. Any thoughts, Chris?
So that is quite the laundry list of things that need to be done. How long did he say that was going to take?
36 plus hours, I believe. Like, I think they had to get it done within an even smaller time frame. I think I read 36 plus hours on various sources. So, yeah, a lot of specialists, a big team, everyone doing their own little bit, whatever their speciality is.
And he'd be working such a tight, confined space there because it's all within the neck. So you can't have too many people crowded around.
Oh yeah,
the neck. There's only a limited access to it as well. So that's wow. It's an ambitious project. It's one that,
to say the least.
Yeah, it's the stuff of science fiction, but they have done things like this before, and maybe you're going to talk about this a little bit later on. I know it was mentioned in that interview that we saw before, but it does remind me of some of the projects that were done during and around World War II with dogs and
yes.
Did they do it with monkeys as well? No, I can't.
They did, and
Dogs.
we'll get into it. You're very right.
Okay.
Dogs and monkeys, unfortunately
Right.
for them, and we do have some videos to watch. So brace yourself for that. So, in his AMA, Val said that Canavero stated that one of his many goals with the surgery was immortality. Val said that he didn't necessarily agree with this, but was involved with his own goal of helping those with severe disabilities to live more independently and prolong their lives. Immortality, could this get any more reanimator?
He's getting very, very cartoon villainish, isn't it?
I mean, like you said, you can keep putting heads on young bodies, but aren't they going to be really old? I'm sure I saw in his TED Talk, I saw somewhere that he said that there was evidence, don't quote me on this, but I think he said something like the body would rejuvenate the head or something. Which, come on, I don't.
Oh, I don't think.
I
don't know. Because I was thinking the opposite. I was like, what if it's like, when somebody gets like frozen faces?
Oh, you mean Botox?
Botox.
That's not putting lip fillers though.
Is it not?
No, that's like a kind of paralyzes the muscles in the face, so you don't like express as much and don't form as many wrinkles.
I was thinking it would be slightly the opposite, where it might be like lip fillers or like Botox, where it's something temporary that's applied. And maybe you have to keep putting this old head on young bodies because it keeps corrupting the bodies, and the bodies keep turning unnaturally old quicker via accelerated aging.
I don't know, but it is something to think about. I mean, I don't know. I mean, brains age too, brains age out. Like, you can't live forever.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing as well. Like, like you said, brains age, and I don't know what it would be like if you had an extremely old brain trying to manage a young body. That might be too much for it. I don't know.
Yeah, and all of these components just don't feel like they would go together. Like, I'm sure something good could come of this kind of experiment or research, but I'm not exactly sure. Like, if Canavero got his wish, I'm not really sure if it was what he dreamed of, Like, when he's actually looking at it in the end, is it going to be like, it's not the way I imagined it.
So what happened then? What happened with this?
We'll get to it, Chris.
Oh,
Relax. Don't
Why
don't lose your head.
Oh.
Many medical professionals call Sergio Canavero a quack and accused Val of just attempting to drum up publicity for his projects, which in my opinion isn't a terrible thing, as the clever chair does sound like a useful device that could help many in his position.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's both. He's deciding to go ahead with this to try and help himself, but he is also using it to promote his own brand. And I think if it was anything else but this clever chair, I think people would be maybe a bit more harsh on it. If he was like,
buy my energy drink.
Yeah, I've decided I'm going to go ahead with this, but really, my true passion is, OnlyFans.
So, Chris, we do have a clip of Sergio Canavero defending his vision and research here. So I think it's important that we listen to what he has to say straight from the horse's mouth. If Canavero sounds a little annoyed, it may be because he's being interviewed by Piers Morgan.
Dr. Canavero, there are many people, including our own Dr. Hillary here, who believe this is a form of, Dr. Frankenstein, that you can't actually do this, you're giving people false hope, and you've no idea what the outcome will be. What is your response to that?
Well, first of all, I'd like to tell you all that today the official Heaven website, headtransplantation.org, is launched, and every single bit of what we're going to do will be found there. So this is very important. Well, my reply is that these people have no idea what they're talking about, and I've been thinking about this and planning this for over 30 years. So 30 years, and that means that there are no experts out there that can really talk, because there are so many aspects.
Dr. Canavero, let me ask you this. You have a man here prepared to take this extraordinary risk. His life will be in your hands. What are the chances, do you believe, that Valerie will survive the operation and indeed have a better quality of life after it than he does now?
As I said multiple times, we all agree, at least the top surgeons that will be part of the team, that 90% is the chance that Valerie stands to survive the operation. So 90%, why? Because there is a plan. The first humans to receive this sort of a head transplant will not be Valerie, but we will just be performing this first on cadavers, then on brain-dead organ donors. So the first live head transplant will come about somewhere where we will be able to transfer the head of a brain-dead organ donor on the body of a decapitated brain-dead organ donor. So only after extensive cadaveric rehearsals and this final proof of principle surgery on brain-dead organ donors, we will move on Valerie. Actually, the list of patients is so long that I can't even begin to just give you all the names.
Okay, Dr. Canavero, let's go back to Dr. Canavero. You've heard what our Dr. Hillary said there. He's a very eminent doctor, very doubtful that you can achieve very much at all here. There are many skeptics in the medical world who agree with that verdict. They don't think this is possible. You are playing with Valerie's life.
Well, they
here,
don't know what they're talking. This doctor doesn't know what he's talking about. And I'm pretty sure that he didn't even read the papers. And for this doctor and all the doctors who are there just watching us, just stay tuned because more news is coming. And I'll be pretty sure that everybody will come around very, very soon.
It just gets, it's just like, this doctor does not know what he's talking about.
It's true, though. He's like a GP.
Yeah. Well, he's a very opinionated individual, isn't he?
Yeah, he did not like Dr. Hillary or Piers Morgan, which is always delightful.
Can't blame him for that.
Yeah, it's always nice to see Hillary get it in the jugular. I guess 30 years, he said 30 years of research into this, didn't he? So I guess he's precious about it. He wants it to be feasible.
Well, if you dedicate 30 years of your life to anything, it means a lot to you. So he's obviously confident, or is at least trying to manifest that it will work. But what he's laying out in that clip does sound quite reasonable.
Do you think so?
They're not. Well, just in terms of the process of things, that they're going to try it first with cadavers, then with brain-dead organ donors, and only at the point where they've proven that it can be done with these individuals that are either deceased or have donated their bodies to science will they even consider working on Valerie.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I think the newspaper articles they didn't focus a lot on. They were like, man's going to get his head cut off and stuck on someone's body, and there's more to it than that. And I always wondered about the story, and I wondered what happened to Val, and I had to do this episode, so let's get into it. So other than making the rounds on British TV, Canavero has done a TED Talk that you can look up. He also has a book which was published in the 90s about how to seduce women. So if you're a Canavero stan, go off.
Okay, this guy, right? Brilliant.
This guy, the spaghetti dude. Oh God, what a character. So Chris, have there been any successful head transplants in animals? That depends on how you define successful. So a head transplant of sorts was performed on a monkey in 1970. The head of one monkey was successfully installed on the body of another by Robert White. However, since the spinal cords were unable to be fused, the monkey could not move its head independently, and it was kept alive via assisted breathing and survived only 8 days. It had restoration of basic sensations such as smell, taste, hearing, and motor function in the face. Sounds a bit horrible to be that monkey, to be honest, because it sounds like he probably just starved to death.
It also sounds like, I mean, all the things that they're saying restoration of, he
Yeah.
already had.
Yeah.
You know, smell, taste, sight, facial movement. What about the body that he's attached to? It's just their limp.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. You're right. Yeah.
They're just essentially what they're saying is we've managed to preserve a
Head.
body, preserve a
a
head,
head for a while.
on another body, and I guess there's like probably obviously.
Well, he was
Well,
breathing,
what's that?
right? Because,
Yeah.
but only mechanically, like not by
Right, well,
himself. Yeah,
But what about the other part? What about the heart?
it must have been. Unless they were oxygenating the blood independently with that machine.
Ah,
Yeah, because that's a thing too. So, yeah, they kept the body alive with an apparatus, I guess, and then the head was just kind of on there, which, yeah. You may also have seen the infamous Vladimir Demikov clip of the severed dog head connected to an apparatus reacting to stimuli. So Vladimir was a Soviet scientist who performed several transplants throughout the 40s and 50s, including replacing animal organs, and transplanted dogs' heads onto the bodies of other dogs. And in one case, added an extra head onto a dog that was fully intact.
yeah. It's, for anybody out there who needs a point of reference, this was heavily featured in the second X-Files movie.
Oh, okay. I don't remember that at all, but I can see where that came straight to your mind, Chris.
Yeah, I want to believe with Billy Connolly as a paedophile priest.
Oh my gosh, I saw that in the cinema, I think.
We saw that in the cinema.
We
on opening
did.
day.
Oh, okay. Were we together for that?
Yeah, we were there. We saw. There was only like 4 people in the cinema.
Oh God, I do remember sitting there and watching it, but PTSD brain kind of erases my memories. But, oh, of course I saw it with you. Who else would I have seen that with? Oh, I wish I could remember things. Okay, so Chris, it's a good job we have these podcasts because, you know, if I forget a subject we've learned about, I can just listen to myself, tell myself about it. So Chris, let's take a look. This is way less funny. Let's take a look at a couple of those videos and you can describe to the listeners what you're seeing. We'll also, I don't know if we'll post these, but we will link them, I guess, in the description. Dog lovers, beware.
An animal's head can also live in the isolated condition. Here is the plan of the experiment. The arterial pump takes arterial blood from the reservoir to the head, while the venous pump drains off the venous blood. The blood is arterialized in the reservoir, where there is a steady flow of oxygen. The artificial blood circulation ensures the metabolism necessary for the life of the head. The isolated head lives on for hours and reacts to external stimuli.
Okay, so that was a short video of these Russian experiments taking place with a very, very British man explaining what was happening. And essentially, yeah, it's a dog's head that has been severed and is being artificially kept alive via machinery. And it's reportedly stayed alive for several hours post-beheading. And it does react to external stimuli. There's some parts in it where they are banging a hammer on the table, and it's reacting to it. They drop citric acid in its mouth, and it licks its lips and starts tasting it. They just prod and poke it in various places in the face, and it reacts to that as anybody would. It certainly is reacting, but it's not doing it very enthusiastically. I'll put it that way. It's not like, when you think, oh, the head was kept alive. You think it's looking around, it's yapping, it's being a dog. It's not. It's just kind of there, existing.
Yeah. Now, you may be happy to know that this is actually a reenactment.
Oh, okay. Right.
That's I had to look for a while to actually find that, but I think it's a reenactment as far as I could find. Unfortunately, Chris, this second video I have for you is not a reenactment. It's the actual footage.
Okay, that is seemingly a Russian news clip with a two-headed dog being led around by a man in a white coat.
Yeah.
Interesting. So these experiments that the Russians did, the Soviets did on animals, what was their end goal? Was it also to reattach human heads?
So Demikov became most known for his Frankendogs. However, he made huge contributions to science and had many firsts in the transplant world, including the first artificial heart, the first lung and liver transplant, and the first heart transplant, and the list goes on.
Yeah, so it seems like he was just trying to push the boundaries on everything, and this is just his most wacky example, I suppose. But if some of those things weren't modern-place now, we might be going, oh, wow, he was trying to do a heart transplant. How silly is that? Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah, it's kind of strange because I think I read that one of Demikov's superiors saw these Frankendogs and he was so disturbed by it that he was like, never make one of these again, like never do these again. And he never did them after that. But I guess he was pushing boundaries back then. Maybe I don't want to compare him to Canavero, honestly. But I feel like back then they probably thought, oh my gosh, when they saw those Frankendogs. But he made leaps and bounds in the transplant world. So I guess it's something that we're thankful for, as gruesome as it is. And I don't want to see that. Like, it's awful.
No.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of medical professionals say that a head transplant isn't feasible. Like, it's just not possible. And that the plan makes sense in small sections, like you can do that and you can do this. But when you're trying to put this all together, a lot of professionals say it does not make sense.
Would a brain transplant be a viable alternative? So you would have a completely new body, but you would still have your same old brain.
Well, it's still connected, the brain and the spinal cord, they're all one.
Yeah.
I mean, could you remove the entire spinal? I do not know how that works. I'm sure they would have thought of it already. I mean, if we're just sitting here as podcasters going, can't you just remove the spine?
My only thought is that they could somehow create an artificial spine, and then it wouldn't matter the damage that you did to the spine because you're going to replace it with an artificial spine anyway. But
are you talking cyborg bodies?
Yeah, cyborg bodies.
Because that was coming up here and there during my research, so I think maybe that's an episode Chris can take for us in the future.
There you go, not just a pretty face.
Not just a pretty face and a big show body.
Not just a hat rack, my friend. Not just a hat rack.
So, listeners, you will probably be happy to hear that Val backed out.
Well, good for him. Wait, was Calvero actually... Did he manage to do all these tests?
We'll find out. So, okay. Val found love, he had a son, his condition remained stable, and he directed his attention to helping humanity by concentrating on his projects. He even returned to GMTV for an updated interview. So let's take a look at that, Chris. And I want you to tell us how Val looks in this video too.
This is quite a U-turn because 2 years ago you were set on having this operation, but you've now changed your mind. So what is it that's made the difference for you?
So let me please explain. Life goes on. I got my own things to do. I cannot wait for the surgery forever. And my condition seemed stable. So some plans changed, and in my life appeared a woman who I fell in love with. I think that recent achievements, especially in China are truly important because this can help paraplegics all over the world to walk again, basically, because this is about fixing spinal cord after some kind of trauma, after some kind of disease. So I think this is should be supported and talked about.
Yeah.
Now, what your surgeon has been saying quite recently is that it has become a modern myth that if the spinal cord is completely severed, it's irreparable, and that's that. And there is no possibility of the brain being able to send signals to the rest of the body ever again, because you can't repair a severed spinal cord. And he says that he's done it. He's done it on apes, on monkeys. Obviously, it's their spinal cords that have been severed and then reattached. It's not two different spinal cords being reattached.
I do not refuse to participate in this kind of surgery in future. But for me, right now, I got too much responsibility in front of my family, in front of my company. I always share my thoughts about this on YouTube, on Instagram. You can search me there. But I cannot do this right now because I cannot leave them without my attention, even for a few months for rehabilitation. Still, I believe that in future, this kind of surgeries can be used to save lives, basically, for terminally ill patients. But with the recent achievements, Dr. Xiaoping Ren and Dr. Sergio Canavero definitely can start helping people already.
And you mentioned your wife and your baby son. How has life changed for you since their arrival? Because it's obviously made a huge difference to your outlook.
Thank you so much. Yes, I've become a really happy person. I've moved to the United States, Florida, and I'm getting my master's degree here. So lots of things changed since I met you last time, guys. And I believe that it's for good, it's for better, and I really appreciate my faith, I appreciate my life today, and I want to do more for humanity while I'm alive. I can do various professional IT inventions like I'm doing in my company right now. So I truly believe that with me or without me, this technology will reach the patients.
Yeah, well, that was Valery returning to GMTV, although a different set of interviewees at this point, and he looks dramatically different,
doesn't he? He looks good.
Yeah. I mean, he looks suave as fuck. To be honest, he's wearing some like pimped out Miami Rock style shirts. He's got slightly longer hair that's slicked back. He's clean shaven. It looks like the acne that he had cleared up. I mean, life's good for him, and maybe that's why he decided not to take this risk.
Yeah, and I feel like he was a bit apprehensive about the spotlight being on him and not the surgery itself, but I think people were genuinely worried about maybe his state of mind making that decision, not seeing that there could be more options and things. But his condition's stable, he found love, he has a kid, he looks so different. Different. So, some years later, in 2017, Canavero popped up again in the media, this time for what he deemed to be a successful head transplant on a corpse in China.
Quantifying statements, Linz, quantifying statements.
So this transplant was performed by a team with Dr. Xiaoping Ren of Harbin Medical University in China at the helm. The plan is to move on to 2 living but brain-dead patients before eventually moving on to a living person. So although Valery pulled out, Canavero does seem to be moving forward with his plan to perform the first head transplant on living donors. So I don't know about you, Chris, but I'm going to keep my eyes on this Dr. Canavero.
Definitely. I will be watching out for this. I'll be using my eyes, my ears. I'll be
all the things on your head.
All the things on my head to I'll keep them close just so that I can find out what's going to go on. However, obviously, we are joking, but if this does go ahead and it works, it cannot be understated how revolutionary that would be to millions of people worldwide.
I know, it's insane.
And yeah, I mean, it could potentially be the first step in something else. So you can see why he gets a bit annoyed by people, doctors who know nothing about, the work that he's doing, and he's trying to blaze a trail. But maybe the world's not ready for this kind of radical research.
Yeah, I don't think they are. I don't think the world is ready. I think some people will be like, yeah, this is a great thing. And, sometimes these kind of things can seem unethical and morally wrong and what have you. But, sometimes it ends up medical miracles are made. And it's like, I don't know if we're ready. I don't know if he's ready. I don't know if this would ever work. But if it did, I have heard other doctors say, like, it's not feasible. It's impossible. And if it was possible, we'd be using these steps on people who are like paraplegic and things like that, or they've had accidents. We'd already be using these kind of technologies and surgeries. Yeah. But I mean, that's a good point too.
I suppose the other route to go, which kind of would make people immortal to a degree, certainly more than another corporeal body, would be if you could give them like an android body.
I did see little hints of this in my research, like other articles. So I think that's something Chris could. You've got a little interest in that, I see.
Yeah, this is something. I was just thinking, because there's a lot of those. There's a lot of amputees now who have those hands that can be controlled through the muscle function and so on. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that continues to evolve, if you'll be able to kind of, for want of a better word, plug the brain in to a computer chip that could control an entire body, and then you could just be a head, and then you've got a immortal android body beneath.
Like that thing from Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, was it Krang?
Yeah, Krang. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
the brain in the jar. But actually, Valeri has a YouTube channel that you can subscribe to, and I was just checking it out briefly, as I was doing this research, and he had an interview with this company called, I think they're called Clone. And they make those sort of like androidy arms. And I've never seen one of them move so fluidly. It actually looked like stop animation. Like I've never seen a prosthetic limb move like that. And I had to watch it several times because I was like, no way. Like that looks so surreal and strange and like realistic. And I don't know.
Yeah, but they've come on absolute leaps and bounds. I mean, even in, our lifetimes, when prosthetic limb used to be piece of plastic,
a rubber hand you could slap people with.
now it is something that can function as close to a human hand,
and even better arm. Sometimes. But that's my episode for today, Chris. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a bit different.
Yeah, something a bit different. It's very interesting though, and interesting to see how the possibilities could go with this. I mean, I don't want to praise him too much because he might be insane, but at the same time,
that's how I feel.
Insane doctors sometimes get things done. So I'll watch with bated breath to see what happens in the future with this. But we could very much be doing an episode in a very short amount of time about the first successful head operation.
God, I hope so. But yeah, thanks, Chris, for listening. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today for this very unique story. And yeah.
Yes, we will see you next time. Thanks again, Linz, for this very interesting story. Don't forget, you can see all of the visuals over at Dystopian Simulation Radio. And if you want a little bit more, if you want to support us, if you want to help us out with the costs for running the podcast and so on, you can head over to patreon.com/Dystopian Simulation Radio.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.